Morning everyone. We're near the small town of Chumtang, about 130 kilometers south of Leh. We're going to be heading back there this morning. We are, for the most part, going to be following the Indus River back to Leh. If Manu just pans around here, you'll see the Indus River Valley. This is a mighty river that flows out of the Himalaya, ultimately flows through Pakistan. Anyway, we've talked a lot on this trip in the videos that we've done about sediment input to the rivers, and here's a good example of sediment input again to the Indus. If you look at the far valley side there, you can see scree slopes. There are dry debris slides coming down the hillside, very well developed examples. Essentially, it's where physical weathering takes place on the upper part of the hill slope and the mid parts of the hill slope. The rocks break down under the action of a whole range of processes, including freeze-thaw action during the colder months, maybe some insulation weathering, possibly a little bit of chemical weathering going on as well. But the upshot is that solid rock is broken down into smaller particles, which then cascade down the slope under the influence of gravity. And seems to be very little water involved here. They just simply slide down, and adjacent to where the larger particles slide down the slope, and they push the finer particles to the side, and you can sort of see the small raised mounds either side of the main track. These are little levees adjacent to the main slide. And right at the very bottom, they end in small fans of material. And when the Indus is at higher flow, it will take some of that sediment and add it to the sediment load of the river. There's also, if we look a little bit farther down valley there, there's a large alluvial fan, and the Indus is hard against that valley edge, and it's eroding the alluvial fan. Again, that's bringing more coarse and a lot of finer material into the river. Now, the river itself, because of all this sediment supply, is quite laden with sediment, and if Manu just pans around, it's going to be a little bit into the sun, so this is slightly awkward. But you'll see that the river itself breaks up into multiple channels which divide and rejoin around these vegetated islands. So in this particular part of the channel, at least, it's adopting a braided channel form. There's a couple of gulls just flying into shot there, which is a surprise because we're a long way from the sea. These are gulls with black heads, so I think they're black-headed gulls. Anyway, I'm getting distracted. Braided channel in the wider stretches of the valley floor. Braided channels tend to form where the streams are overladen with sediment. They can't transport all of the sediment that's supplied to it, so they tend to deposit some of it in the form of bars and islands, and the river will break up into multiple channels around them. But in narrower parts of the valley, perhaps where you've got two alluvial fans coming in very close together, or some harder bedrock is outcropping, that will squeeze the river, and it tends to adopt a single channel form. And often there's a bit of a steepening at this point as well. And as we travel down the Indus, my anticipation is that the river will sort of widen and braid, and then narrow and form a single channel, and then widen and braid. So we'll see this alternation of this braided channel forms, single channel forms as we go down valley. But we might do another stop somewhere and talk about that.